A big hello to our Highlights Foundation family. We're so happy to have you here with us. For those that may not know, I'm Cat Galeano. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the social media manager for the Highlights Foundation, joining you from Westchester, New York, on the traditional lands of the Siwanoi people. I am also a writer and a reader who is so excited to have this lunchtime chat with our friends and faculty, Nora Shalaway Carpenter and Rob Costello, where we'll talk a little bit about their upcoming mini course, Intro to Writing Short Fiction, a 2-night mini for middle grade and YA authors. So we're going to jump right into it, if that's okay.
Sure.
My first question for both of you is, a lot of people have publishing on their mind when it comes to short stories. Can you tell us about how your first short story made it to publication in the industry?
Yeah, they're very different stories. Rob, why don't you go first and then I'll hop on.
Sure. So I think it very much is a pathway to publication, writing short fiction. It's a great way to start. And taking me back all the way to the mid to late 2000s. I don't actually remember the year it was, but the first story that I ever published professionally was a very, very little story, 150 words, basically flash fiction, almost something called a drabble, which is 100 words. And it was adult fiction. And I published it in a magazine called Narrative, which maybe some people have heard of. It's a pretty prestigious magazine, and I was thrilled. Like, I just sent it on a lark. I saw the call for 150 words, and I dashed something off, and never thought I'd hear anything. And I got paid, which was great. But the biggest thrill of all with that was that they posted everything on their website, and they have all kinds of writers. I mean, it's a fairly well-established publication. And so one day I happened to log in to see my story, because I was excited. And on their main page, they had headshots of several of the authors in that issue of the magazine. And there was my headshot, and 2 headshots over was Margaret Atwood. And I died. I absolutely died. And I took like 50 screenshots and I saved them and I posted them on Facebook. And it was like, it's still one of the highlights of my writing career. It was the most exciting thing ever. So that's my first publication story.
Oh my gosh.
I
don't think I knew that story.
That is incredible.
Wow. Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so Rob definitely published short fiction before I did. I grew up writing short fiction. That was like what I wrote. I think especially for like young writers or people that come to writing maybe later, and like it's an easier, more manageable genre, right? Because I remember being a young adult and being like, okay, I can kind of tackle this short story, but I can't imagine ever writing a novel, which, and then you grow in your career and you can do eventually. But anywho, so I did win a couple awards. I won a couple state awards with my short fiction, but in terms of like professional publication, my I put together an anthology, and so included one of my own stories. So
it's a good way to go.
Yeah. Right, exactly. That's not like the usual route. Like, I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but yeah, it was for all different reasons that worked out, and a lot of it has to do with timing and what was happening in the world. And the book Rural Voices was just really kind of like in popular culture, like the interest in rural people, I guess, of the timing. And so that kind of brought me back into short fiction, which I really hadn't dabbled in much since my earlier days. And then I just keep like doing it. And yeah, it's really fun.
I just love what you say, and I want to just reiterate it. Like, the idea of writing short fiction is a little bit kind of easier to the mind as opposed to like the novel where you're like, oh my God, 300 pages, 200 pages seems
Oh,
unfathomable.
yeah.
So I feel like I just love that you said that because it is true. Like I'm currently tackling a YA and I'm still like, do I know what I'm doing? Not really. But then someone will call me for like a zine and be like, hey, can you pop out this short story? I'd be like, yeah, that's done. So like I love that you said that because I feel like all of us can resonate with that. So I really encourage everyone to come to the class. For those that either want to play in the short story format and haven't really gotten there or are too overwhelmed with the novel idea and prefer to stick in that short story realm, truly everyone, please come. I'm going to jump into our second question, which is the description says for new writers, short stories offer a way to express the basics of storytelling and develop the skills essential to crafting publishable fiction. Can you give an example of how that has played out in practice, either for you or other writers you've worked with?
I forget. Is this mine or
Yeah, why
yours?
don't you jump in,
Okay.
Nora? Yeah.
I was like, which would be okay. All right. So, how has it worked out for me? Okay. So, I think one of the most interesting stories that I'm thinking of is Melinda Lowe's award-winning novel that why am I a night at the Telegraph Club. I was like, what is it? Okay. That actually started as a short story.
Oh,
And so it's just a great example of how you can play around with it. Like she and Melinda had no idea. Like I actually specifically asked her, and she had no idea that that would eventually become a novel. Like it wasn't in her wheelhouse at all. She wrote it for an anthology, and then her agent was like, "Hey, I think you could maybe do something more with this." And it's really interesting. I encourage everybody to look at the short story in, I think it's in All Out. I think it's in one of the All Out anthologies, and then read it and then read the novel, or if you've already read the novel, go back and read and see the differences, see how different the characters are, like their goals and expectations, like how it changed, because it's not just like a shortened, it's not like one chapter from the novel that then became, or yeah, that then was its own piece. It was very, very different. So it just shows, and like Melinda would have never written that novel if she hadn't tried that, which is really cool. And then in my own work, so I just in September published a novel called Fault Lines, and that book has a little bit of magic in it. And in one of my anthologies, Absolutely Normal, my short story in that has magic too. And it's like I was kind of playing with how can I make this magic work? And the magic is a little different in the book and the short story. It's actually very different, but kind of like the sense of like that there's this energy that you can tap into is the same. And so the short story actually allowed me to play with that, to be like, is this something I can pull off? Like, how would I make it work in a shorter piece? And then I really, really liked it, and I was able to then transfer it to a longer form.
I love that too. Like I never really thought about sort of using the short story format to really play with
Yeah.
characters with time and space and whatever, and then sort of develop it into a larger format. I never thought of that. So I am learning something new already. So I love
Great.
that. Rob, did you want to add something or you want me to jump into?
Well, just first, I want to add that Nora's novel and her short story are fabulous, and everybody should go out and get them and read them. But back to the original question, when we touched on this a little bit, the idea that short stories are a great place for new writers to start because they're small. You have to work with all of the tools of writing fiction, so plot, character, theme, pacing, all of that is essential to crafting a good short story and a good novel. And once you get your confidence, once you get your, the wind under your wings, writing short stories, you really feel ready, more ready anyway, to tackle longer projects. So Nora and I both know a student we worked with in Whole Novel in 2022 named Sarah Maxfield. And she started writing flash fiction, which are really, really short stories. She sort of segued to working on graphic novel scripts. And that's what we worked with her at Whole Novel on. But then she started writing a novel, right? And so I worked with her on my anthology. We mostly come out at night. She contributed a story to that because I loved her writing so much. I asked her if she'd like to contribute, and so we stayed in touch. And she sent me her novel to read, and it's wonderful. And she's about to go on submission with it now. It's about to query it, and so I don't know that she would have been ready for that step without the practice and the training that short fiction gave her to build her up to the level of writing a novel.
Yeah.
But I also, oh, sorry, go ahead, Nora. No,
I was just going to say, to add on to that, like, I want people to know that short fiction, it doesn't just have to be prose, like what Rob was saying, like with, like there are graphic shorts that if that's like something you're interested in, you could do a verse short, like you could do different forms of prose, like the short form just offers a lot of variety, and it's a great place to try those things and tackle, or especially like if maybe you want to write a short story and you want to try out second person point of view, because maybe you have a novel idea that you're like, oh, I'd kind of like to do that, but before I spend 2 years or more working on that, what can I do it? Can I write like a really interesting piece in which that point of view works?
I am learning so much, and I wish I was taking notes, but thankfully I can rewatch this after. So, because I love what you said, like what Rob was saying about, this student of yours that jumped into graphic novels after writing flash fiction, and then the novel, and then what you said, Nora, too, of like playing around in that short fiction and then writing novel and verse short fiction, and just like sort of jumping around. I feel like people probably forget that just kind of learning the short fiction format really can just catapult you into every direction of writing in general.
Yeah, and I think also there's so many. Sorry, I just keep
talking, but
I
love it.
I think like with the first question, you were like, a lot of people come to it because of publication. They want to write something, they want to get published right away. And I think that, I understand that, but I don't think that should be the only thing, because like, as Rob knows, all the time things come up where you don't know about something, and then all of a sudden there's like, hey, there's a call for this type of story, or there's a deadline for this competition, and it's like in 2 weeks when you find out. And so it's really hard to like bang out a really good short story in that time, at least for me. But if I have like a bunch of short stories already written that I've been experimenting with and that are in pretty good shape, then I can just like go through them and be like, oh, okay, I think this one would fit it. So like, I don't want people to think like, I'm not going to spend writing time on this because it's a waste, or I'm not going to use it. It's like, that is like the complete wrong way to think about it. They can be useful in so many ways.
Yeah, keep writing those little nuggets, people. Do not throw away those short stories you have stored in your computer. So I'm going to jump to our next question, which is our last question. Now, for more experienced writers, it says short stories present an exciting and enjoyable medium for play and experimentation. How are you both using them now in your careers?
So why don't I jump in first with this, because my novel writing and my short story writing bleed into each other all the time. So, for example, I am working on an anthology proposal with a friend of mine, Jennifer Richard Jacobson, and I wrote a short story for that. And it wasn't quite right, and I didn't love it for the anthology proposal. But I love the story, and I love the idea. And so I'm not going to get rid of it. Like, I'm going to do something with it. So I decided to write my first middle grade novel using the short story as the framework. And I just finished it a couple of months ago, and I sent it to my agent, and hopefully we'll be going on sub soon. So that's just one example of how short stories seed my longer fiction. And then in the reverse, I have my debut short story collection coming out in March. And 3 of the stories in there started out as parts of novels that didn't work in the novels they were in. But I love the idea. I love, it's like a chapter here, an idea there. I don't throw anything away. I'm like, if I wrote it, I want to use it somehow. So they came out of the novel, and I was like, well, these would make good short stories. Like, I can make this into a short story. And I did, and I love them. So I think once you start writing them, you realize how fluid that relationship is between writing longer work and shorter work, and all kinds of great things can come from it.
That is incredible. I love that. I love that you use that fluid motion, that one sort of helps the other and back and forth. I think that's so special and so important to remind people, because I feel like it's easily forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing is wasted. Don't waste anything.
No. And I'll just say that right now in my career, like I use the short form mainly to experiment with like newer themes. Like if there's a theme that I want to try out, or a new form that I want to try out, like that's where I go with my short fiction. And I have so the novel that I actually got my agent with like never ended up being published, and that's okay. Like I was sad at the time, but now I'm like that's good, but because I could do better. But I really like, there are things in that book that I just really loved, and so I will occasionally pull from it and put them in like short fiction pieces, and that makes me so happy, because it's
Ooh.
like that one story will never be published, but like there's still so much of it that I was able to put out in the world. So, and I would have
That's
never
so cool.
imagined that would have been the case. So, like Rob said, like I don't throw anything away. Like even if I get tired of something and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll just not open this file for a while. Like you just don't know when you might need it or when it will come in handy.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Like your story essentially like has multiple lives because
It
it lives out in different
does.
stories. Ah, how
Yes.
cool is that? So that like you said, that one novel that you had that you were crushed that it didn't go places as the full format now lives in
Right.
multiple spaces. Ah, how cool is that? Like Rob and Nora said, do not get rid of your things because they will have a second life, maybe a ninth life. If you're lucky when you spread them all over the place.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so much. I'm going to just close out our conversation. If you'd like to learn more from Nora and Rob, please register for their 2-night mini, Intro to Writing Short Fiction, a 2-night mini for middle grade and young adult authors, taking place January 20. There's no 30. There is no 33rd, excuse me, January 23rd and 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you attend the class live, if you cannot attend the class live, please do still register. You'll get the recordings emailed to you after the close of the course. Their books are also available to purchase at our virtual bookshop powered by bookshop.org. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Rob, for joining me today, and we cannot wait to see you online soon.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.